Welcome to the night shift. Hey guys, real quick before we get into the stories, thank you so much for watching. If you have your own horrific real life stories, feel free to comment them below and I might feature them in a future video. Anyway, let's go. My brother and I both have a distinct memory of stumbling across a facility in the woods. I think this will be pretty long, but bear with me because I'm trying to write all of this down to show my brother later and compare our stories. My brother is 7 years older than me, so when I was 9 or 10, he was in high school and had to hide from our parents that he smoked and dipped tobacco. As a result, most days of the week after he got home from school, I was homeschooled, we'd go out onto the woods for an hour or two. We lived way out in the country in an already rural part of East Texas, so there were plenty of woods to explore. The land south of our house was owned by a mining company, and my parents didn't want us going out there, so we always crossed a fence to the north of our house and explored the woods out there. Very likely some locals' property that we had no business being on, but when you live out in the country, you figure you'll have plenty of sign before you accidentally walk into someone's backyard. After a few months of venturing out in this area, never travelling more than an hour's distance from our house and always in the daylight, we decided one day we'd just keep walking and walking. My brother smoked and spit into a Dr. Pepper bottle. We entered big pastures and dove back into deeper woods. Whenever we talked about it, we've always said that we must have travelled at least a mile, but usually say far more. Eventually, we came across a circular pond I distinctly remember having a much higher rim on one side. My brother explained that this was because a tractor had dug it out and piled up more dirt on one side than the others. We kept going past the pond and entered another patch of woods. As we came out, we saw that the tree line curved around sharply to the right, and the clearing we now stood in opened up far wider. We went in that direction, and while my memory of getting there is a little hazy, I know we suddenly came across a very large white building surrounded by a high fence. There was a gate large enough for vehicles to move in and out, and a dirt road leading away from the facility. We could hear sounds of activity and could see people walking around the outside of the fence near the gate. I'm afraid any other detail I could give at this point might be coloured by false memory or exaggerations from an imaginative young brain, so I'll wait to talk to my brother about it before I go any further. At that moment, we both felt the spine-tingling terror alerting the body that something was about to be very wrong. We were not supposed to be here. We were at the very least going to get into serious trouble. We were standing in the middle of a clearing gawking at a facility of some kind on what was obviously someone else's property. And we were seeing something deep in the woods that we had never known was here. All this time we'd spent walking around these woods. If we'd just gone a ways further, we would have stumbled across this. I remember standing there for a moment longer, asking my brother what this could possibly be. He told me something along the lines of, "I have no fucking clue, but we should really get the fuck out of here." The tone in his voice truly freaked me out, and I remember running hard back the way we came, crossing the same pond and cutting a path as close as possible to the route we travelled. When we finally stopped, out of breath, my brother told me that in no way, shape or form would I utter a word of this to our parents. They were spankers and awful grounders, so he knew the trouble he would be in for taking his little brother into what was quite possible danger. After that day, we kept going out in those woods, but never that far. Eventually, my brother got caught with a can of Skull, and my dad made him eat the whole can and puke it up on the porch. Being an easily intimidated kid, it wasn't hard to get more information out of me about my brother's smoking and dipping habits, but I never brought up the facility we'd found. Over the years, my brother and I have brought this story up many times. Our parents have gotten way laxer since we've all grown up, and we've even told them the story to my mother's retroactive shock. We've added a lot of other weird ones to our arsenal in the time since, as our family has always lived by huge areas of land for us to wander around on, but this is one of our favourites. It's always, remember that time we almost got killed by those government researchers? Remember that time we found that crazy building in the woods with those people walking around it? But for the past few days, this event has really been bugging me. I told my wife about it in detail, and she was pretty amused. I thought I'd look around Google Maps a little bit at the area I grew up in, something I'm honestly surprised I've never done for these specific reasons before. And what I've found, or haven't found, is really bizarre. Moving north from my old house, which has since burnt down and left an ugly scar on the satellite image on Google Maps, I can very clearly make out the woods we spent our time in. When I go further north, I can see several large clearings followed by more wooded areas. Eventually, I even found the circular pond, and I'm positive I can make out the higher end of the pond that we stood on as my brother explained how it had been made. When I drag the map up further, I see what looks to be a clearing and the sharp curve of the tree line where we saw the facility, but there's nothing there. No trace of a building, no evidence of a dirt road leading away from the old structure. It's just a pasture and more trees. In fact, when I zoom out and look at the whole area, it doesn't seem possible for there to have been an operation of the scale we saw out there at all. Just a little ways further north, the land becomes nothing but pasture with houses pressed up against the country road. For people to have come and gone from this area, they would have to have had a road of some kind, as well as power lines stretched out to the building. But there's nothing like that on Google. In fact, there's really no "here it was" spot on the map. It's like it was never there to begin with. It's been a few years since we've talked about it, so I texted my brother earlier today to ask him if he still remembered this happening. He immediately after said, "Hell yeah man, that was an extremely weird day. You know how good I used to be in the woods, but that shit really freaked me out. We had to get out of there." This whole event feels more and more like something that we walked into that we shouldn't have seen. I still remember that feeling of dread upon finding the place and knowing that something bad would happen if we stuck around. I'm going to try and send him this post later so he can read it and corroborate, as well as look at the Google Maps himself to see if he sees anything different. Stranger under the bed. I am 22 and this incident happened 1.5 years ago. I just moved into my first apartment and was in the process of moving in. The door that led into my apartment locks itself automatically when closed. So I was going to the entrance of the apartment complex to get my mail while talking on the phone with my boyfriend. I returned to my apartment and sat on the bed while opening the mail and using my phone. I dropped the phone on the floor and it landed under the bed, so I had to lie on the floor and stretch for it. I saw something that caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened and I choked the urge to scream. The person under my bed was lying still with his back towards me and his head to his chest, so I couldn't see his face. And he didn't see me. Trying to be rational while so many thoughts rushed through my head, I picked up the phone, said, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just going to take a shower and call you back." The bathroom is right next to my bed, so I hastily walked in, quietly locked the door, turned the shower on, jumped out my window, my apartment is on the first floor, and called the police. They told me to wait nearby, but to go across the street and see if anyone comes out the door to the apartment complex. This was during summer and it was still light out. I placed myself across the street, hiding behind a car while watching my open bathroom window and the entry door. I called my boyfriend and he came to me just before the police. I gave them my keys and they went inside. Only moments later, 2 cops came out holding a thin and tired looking man. His eyes looked crazy, but he didn't try to get away. The policeman that had stood beside me and comforted me while police searched through my house I was a mess, shivering and crying. Told me that the man stood outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives waiting for me to come out. This man had somehow crept in my entry door while I was getting my mail and hid under the bed. The man that was trying to hurt me turned out to be a homeless person and was placed in a mental hospital. My boyfriend moved in the very next day. Thanks for reading. I just wanted to share my story so that others might know what to do if a situation like this occurs. The police told me that what I did was truly amazing and rational. If I had screamed, this could have ended really badly for me. Man in forest kills animals and chases me while ringing bells in the dark. This is truly the scariest, most horrible thing that has ever happened to me. I've never been so petrified in my life. To this day, I still don't know who this man was, what he was trying to do, or if he is still where I saw him. I'm sorry for how long the geographical description is. I just want everyone to understand how secluded I was when this happened, and how badly it could have ended if it wasn't for my parents. I was back home for the summer for the first time in a year after starting uni. Our home was, and still is, just outside of a small town with forests all around. There was also a small man-made lake, which was diverged from a river that ran miles through the forest and ramified into a few streams east of the lake. Near my home, there was a small grassy path that led to the river following a stream. It was a long walk, but one I used to go on often as a child. I knew the forest there well. I knew where I could cut through dense trees to meet the stream. The walk I would go on always led me off the path, which turned northwest slowly, so away from the stream, and then took a sharp turn to the west after a few miles walk, at which point the stream was hidden quite deep in the forest. I'd continue to walk north and follow the stream through the forest to get to the river, then follow the river west to get to the lake. It's easy to get lost in this forest because the terrain isn't just a slope down to the water. It goes up and down, and you end up completely surrounded by trees. I spent many days wandering around there alone or with my dad over the span of 18 years. Never saw anybody else in the forest. I went there twice that summer, both times alone-ish. The first time I left in the morning, I walked along the path away from the stream to the sharp bend, then cut back into the forest. I reached the stream after about an hour or so. As I was running my hands through the water, I heard a bell from far away, coming from the north. Something was making a bell ring fervently and periodically, which I found strange. I listened well. I wondered if it was a lost hunting dog and started moving towards the sound. Yeah, I bloody know, I'd be the first person to die, but I was heading north anyway, so what the hell. I realized it couldn't have been an animal. I could tell the bell was too heavy, because of how clear the sound was to be on a collar. I kept moving, and the bell was moving away from me. It stopped completely after 5 minutes. The stream wasn't big enough or strong enough to carry a bell that could have been enclosed in a tin or something, and the river was too far still. I thought of everything, but nothing explained the sound, apart from one obvious thing, which I didn't feel comfortable with for some reason. I knew it had to have been a person. I stopped thinking about it and just walked on normally, until I found a badger. A blooming dead one, carefully decapitated. It had obviously been done with a knife. It was fairly fresh, the body was still limp, and there wasn't too much smell coming from it. The wound was full of maggots, but I knew that it happened soon after exposure. The sound of the bell had been following the stream, so had I. So the badger was put there, maybe killed there, at least decapitated while I was walking that way. I suppose. I dunno really. Nothing else happened that day. 1 week later, I went back for the second time that summer, and the last time ever. I left home around 6 p.m. I made it to the stream and then walked to the river in an hour, but then decided to go back the way I came because it was getting late and it was raining quite heavily. The sun set around 9 p.m. I was walking as fast as I could. The sound of the rain in the trees was surreal and loud. I was somewhat trotting with my head down for a while through the clearest and most open part of the forest when I bumped into something heavy. The smell was sickly. It was the decomposing body of a badger with his head strung to his front paws. That area looked a bit like a ham because of the way it was tied, just swinging from a tree. Like an almost literal load of bollocks, it was this putrid bag of stench, wet and dripping green liquid. I started gagging. I had some sort of mucus-textured fluid in my hair. It was repulsive. At first I just stared at it, slightly gobsmacked. Then I started fidgeting violently because I felt like I was drenched in its juices. I was soaking from the rain and my senses became confused. It felt like a bucket of ice-cold water had been thrown over me when I realized I walked the same way to get to the river, so someone had strung up the body after I'd passed it on the way there. Someone knew I'd see it. So, was someone watching me and running around the forest? Were the faint sounds of branches breaking around me not animals? I looked around and started jogging. I was half running, half walking away from the stream back towards the path for a while when I heard the bell again. I proceeded to call my dad while running. I told him to meet me on the path where it sharply turns west. It was the closest part of the path to me and to go as fast as he could because someone was in the forest. I can't explain the feeling I had. It was like I just shit out my intestines and stomach. I literally felt the hairs on my neck raised despite being soaked. It was dark. I jogged as fast as I could. I was panicking because the path was still a bit far away, just too far to feel safe. It was still raining. Every single sound was muffled. I felt like everything was further away than ever before. The bell went on for way longer than last time, on and off. I felt like it was surrounding me at one point. The fear, combined with my compromised hearing and the fact I couldn't flip and breathe properly, was making me slightly lose my sense of direction. I was automatically heading southwest, but I wasn't really sure what I was even doing. I was breathing like a goddamn horse, coughing my lungs up, kinda crying out loud like a toddler does, tripping over leaves and twigs like an idiot. I stayed on the phone with my mum, who was on her way with my dad. I kept hearing sounds, but I wasn't sure what they were. My mum was screaming on the phone at the same time that they were on the path, that I needed to run, and that my dad had gotten out and was heading east from the path bend. I was terrified, so I went into survival mode. I was doing the half running, half speed walking thing again because I was out of breath. Then I heard branches break, clear footsteps for the first time from down in the forest, and the bell ringing louder. I didn't want to, but I looked over my shoulder. That's when I saw what was in the forest with me. A tall figure creeping in my direction at the very end of the clearing, ringing this bell slowly in front of his stomach. I could tell he was staring straight at me. Now, I didn't know if I had hidden secret sprinting ability or instinctual adrenaline-induced superhuman powers, but when I tell you I ran for my life, I fucking didn't look back once. I screamed as much as I could. I lied. "I'm on the phone with the police! They're on the path! Dad, I can see you! I'm here!" I wanted to yell, "Dad, please, where are you?" But I kept that to myself. I felt like something awful was going to happen. I felt like the man was right behind me. I kept telling myself not to look back. I was gasping and wheezing, crying so hard and screaming for my dad. I felt shivers on my neck and then switched off. I just ran. I even dropped my bag and only realized I didn't have it anymore when I was in the car. I felt like my phone was the only way home. Things no longer felt real. It was like my legs were moving by themselves. I didn't know if the man was still following me. I could only hear my heart beating in my ears and the bell. I finally heard my dad shout my name, and I knew he was coming my way and that he could see me because of the intonation of his voice. I pretty much lunged myself at him when we got to each other. My dad heard the bell too. My mum could hear it on the phone. She was waiting in the car ready to leave fast. My brother saw a ghost as a kid. 2 decades later, I realized what he actually saw. I was about 7 years old and my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mum woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just us 3 in the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of the hallway. Taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from the upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway are window doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kinda leans into a small hill. My brother and mum both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they just couldn't help but flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. I'm going to try pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway. I don't know if my mum wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try and scare me, or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mum and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog we had for a short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviours when my mum blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops? Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had." This really caught me by surprise, because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. Gun owner family in a quiet rural WV neighbourhood, etc. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom." She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running, and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall white male wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now I know it sounds obvious hearing those 2 stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago in my mid-20s that I pieced it together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. Someone knocked on my window at 3 AM. This is my first time posting anything like this on here, so forgive me if this isn't the best explanation. This summer, I decided to pick up some graveyard shifts at my current full-time job, simply because it pays more and I am a university student drowning in student debt. About 2 weeks ago, on the rare occasion that I get to sleep during the time the sun is down, at 3:30 to 4 AM, I was suddenly awoken by a loud sound. Me, being half asleep, I honestly didn't know what the sound was exactly, so I just chopped it up to being one of the neighbours dropping something, because I live in an apartment with very thin walls, so I just try going back to sleep. After about 10 minutes of laying there with one eye closed, I hear the sound again, but this time I'm pretty much awake, so I recognize the sound immediately. Someone was knocking on my window. For context, I'm a single female living alone and in a basement suite, so my windows are basically level with the sidewalk. Anyway, obviously I'm freaked out. I don't know what the heck to do. I don't want to move and make any loud noises so they don't know I'm home, and I'm just frozen laying in this bed. Then I hear the knocking again. I instantly bolt up as my fight or flight kicks in and run to the front door, which has my keys and pepper spray on it. The keys clink together and make a noticeable noise, and the knocking starts to get more intense and loud. This is when I realize the window with the screen by my bed is almost all the way open because my cat likes to sit on the edge and I forgot to close and lock it. I start to freak out, already having major anxiety. I start looking for my phone just in case I need to call the police. Me being fucking clumsy and shaking from anxiety, I drop the phone on the ground, and whoever is at my window proceeds to what sounds like either slid his fingernails or sharp object down the screen. I realize this person's intentions are either to come in or scare me. So like a fucking idiot and not thinking, I run to the window as fast as I can and slam it shut and locking it, avoiding looking outside at whoever it was. The knocking stops and I wait about 30 minutes without hearing any knocking. I lay back down and go right back to sleep. The next morning, I honestly couldn't believe that even happened to me. I start to think maybe it was a dream, so I go outside and investigate. And I see an empty beer bottle and a rip in my blanket. I text my only friend that knows where I live and ask if they were fucking with me. They said no, which I figured because they don't drive and live quite far away, and the buses around my house stopped running well before 3 AM. So I called my landlord and told him what had happened. He says to ignore it and it's happened before, which is fucking creepy. Anyways, I obviously recognize now I should have done a lot of things differently and called the police right away. It hasn't happened since. Nonetheless, still super terrifying, but I can't afford to move again. So, creepy bro knocking on my window, let's not meet again. This has been The Night Shift. If you've enjoyed these stories and want more, hit subscribe and I'll post more videos weekly.